Sergio, welcome to the Future Melbourne podcast.
Thanks, Sean.
Today we're talking about Lygon Street, obviously one of Melbourne's most iconic main streets. For generations it's been known as Little Italy, the birthplace of cafe culture, a meeting place for food, politics, art and celebration. But like many great city streets, it is changing and continues to change and evolve. So Sergio, you're the president of the Trader Association Carlton Inc, which represents businesses in Carlton. So we thought it was apt to bring you on today and share your perspective about your understanding of the history of place in Carlton and also what you hear from businesses every day in the course of that role. So Sergio, for those who don't know you, tell us a little about who you are and your connection to Carlton and Lygon Street.
Sure. Well, I've had a long love affair and connection with Carlton. I grew up in the country, but even as a kid, I supported Carlton Football Club. And then when I shifted to Melbourne for uni at 18, I was just instantly drawn to Carlton.
Yeah.
And still visit Carlton most days. And what I think I love about Carlton, I mean, I have an affinity with the Italian heritage, but I just like, it's a vibrant place. It's a meeting place, great place to eat, drink coffee, meet different people, have discussions. I think it's just one of life's greatest pleasures to be able to drink and talk.
Yeah.
Not all day, but
So you've just touched on it there a little bit, but I mean, what does it mean to you personally, Lygon Street as a place?
To me, essentially, it's a meeting place and catching up with the people, meeting new people. I would still have a coffee on the street most days, meet different people. I think that's the most satisfying part for me, but also, it draws on a long and rich history. Different communities have helped shape the area. I know we think of it as Little Italy, but, its history goes well beyond that, with the Jewish influence.
Yes, of course.
And I guess early on when the city was smaller, it was known for its, coffee, pizza, Italian food.
Yeah.
And it's not just that, but I think it was our first real Italian landmark.
Yes.
In Australia, and I think that gives it a uniqueness. Alfresco dining is probably more pronounced than it is in other cities, and I think that all adds to the atmosphere.
Yeah, and we've already touched on it. It is a street that is evolving, and it's got an interesting history there that you've just alluded to, not just etched in that Italian culture you mentioned, but also the Jewish history. But I suppose you bring an interesting perspective on it in 2026 as the president of the Traders Group that represents all those different facets of Lygon Street and talks to those different businesses. So how did you first become involved in the trader community on Lygon Street?
I was asked by people that knew me, and I guess they asked me, one, because my passion for Carlton is well known.
Yeah.
And when you've got grey hair, people assume you've got a lot of business experience. So, I've been in business over 40 years. So I think the combination of my affection for Carlton and experience that I had, I was asked to join the board, which I did. And then the next year I was elected as a president, and this is my 4th year as president.
Yeah, and you're enjoying it?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's challenging, but no, it is good because, you feel you can make a change and you meet different people, and it's a great way to meet the traders and different identities, and we work closely with City of Melbourne, Victoria Police. If I wasn't involved with Carlton Inc, I wouldn't have made those relationships, or you might send an email, but it's just not as effective as building relationships.
Yeah, face to face.
And Carlton Inc and Carlton is essentially a lot about relationships, meeting people, connecting with people, and that's also where you get a lot of ideas, feedback, intel from the street. It's been very satisfying.
So is that the crux of what Carlton Inc. does behind the scenes? Is act as a bit of a conduit, a connector for businesses in Carlton, but Lygon Street obviously is that prominent main street that sort of defines the area.
Yeah, yes, we predominantly represent the traders, so the economy is probably foremost in our thinking. And, we have a board, so we have a mix of skills. And, we represent the traders, so we talk to the traders, we advocate for the street. We're involved in advocating for the CCTV cameras, so we work closely with City of Melbourne and Victoria Police. That's worked really, really well. We organise events. We just had Easter hunt that had on
Yes.
Friday, which had, or Thursday rather.
You had a lot of people turn out for that.
800 kids were registered for that, so that's really
1,700.
700,
Oh,
700, sorry.
Yeah. That's still a big crowd.
No, it was fantastic. And from one end of the street to the other, and there was face painting and eggs.
Yeah.
And so it was great. The local, one of the banks got really involved, so that was fantastic.
And that helps draw the resident community as well together with the
Yeah.
businesses, I imagine, yeah.
Yeah. So that was terrific, and we don't organise, but we support the Melbourne Italian Festa
Yes.
at the exhibition buildings.
Yeah, which used to be on Lygon Street. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, and that's we're working on that as well. And then also, whilst we represent the traders, we don't work in isolation. So we collaborate closely with the Carlton Residents Association. I mentioned Victoria Police,
Yes.
Salvation Army, City of Melbourne, obviously. So we, listening and collaborating will get you much further than just working in isolation. So while, the economic prosperity for the traders is one of our highest priorities, we don't do that in isolation.
Yes.
So we work with various groups. But I guess advocacy, a voice for the traders is one of our central role.
Yeah, and you've just touched on things like safety and amenity being among some of the issues that traders are obviously concerned about. But what are among the biggest concerns traders are bringing to you at the moment in Carlton?
While they're both relevant, I feel it's changed in the last couple of years. Say 2 years ago, most of the feedback was predominantly about safety, antisocial behaviour, aggressive begging, vandalism, maybe the odd assault. That's still relevant, but I feel that has come down.
It's improved,
really.
yeah.
The
The City of Melbourne's invested a lot in that space, haven't they?
Patrols, police have, the cameras have helped, and even the approach, I feel, with some of the aggressive beggars has changed.
Yes.
And so it's not as confronting as it was. So that's always a high priority, but it's not mentioned as much as it was previously. And I believe that a place has to be safe and attractive for it to bring in visitors and also investment. So we can never forget that. But the topic that comes up the most now, Sean, is foot traffic and the number of visitors. The weekends are fine, or can be fine. Friday, Saturday nights are really busy. It's hard to find a car spot or get a restaurant booking. But during the week, particularly early in the week, it's slow, and there's no denying that it's not what it was pre-COVID. It's not what it was in the 70s, and that's that is a major concern.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of investment coming in and new businesses opening, so it's not doom and gloom, but we do need to attract more foot traffic to the strip.
Yeah, and we'll definitely unpack some more of those challenges deeper into this conversation. But first, let's take listeners through a bit of a potted history of Lygon Street for what it's worth, because it is also important to acknowledge the custodians of the land around Melbourne, the First Nations history and their connection to the area. But Lygon Street, for many people who wouldn't be aware, is really an extension of Robert Hoddle's design with that generous boulevard form. Still today, it's 2 lanes of traffic either side of the street, which we'll also get into with a proposal from the Carlton Residents Association, which I know the Carlton Inc has thrown its support behind.
Yes.
Of course, there's the transition through the gold rush and early migrant settlement. You touched on it as Melbourne's first Jewish precinct, then increasingly an Italian one post World War II. So why Carlton became the social and business heart of Italian Melbourne is an interesting question that we'll get into here. But when people talk about Lygon Street's history, what do you think they most need to understand?
I think Carlton it's probably best known for its Italian culture, pizza, coffee, dining, al fresco dining in particular, and there's no denying that is central to Carlton. But I think what's often underappreciated that it is also an arts and intellectual hub, because we're literally joined to Melbourne University. We've got institutions like Readings Bookstore, Nova Cinema,
La Mama,
yes, that's one I don't want to miss. The trade union, which was probably more prominent in earlier days with big personalities like Bob Hawke. So it's always been a hot pot for discussion, debate. I mentioned how I have coffee most days and I enjoy it, but virtually every visit I finish off by walking down the Readings bookstore window just to glance what's in the window. I may not go in, I may not buy. So, we've got the cinema. So there is a lot more than just a coffee, just a hospitality
It's very true,
side.
isn't it? Like the art, literature, knowledge bank is sort of palpable when you're on Lygon Street, isn't it? That feeling in the air.
Yeah,
so it's synonymous with the area.
And I often get comments from people, friends, that I haven't seen or haven't been in Melbourne for 20 years, but went to Melbourne Uni, and they'll still ask, is Brunetti still there? Or where do you drink your coffee now, etc. And they talk about it with with such fondness, and their connection came from Melbourne Uni. Some of these came from the country, but the uni is what gave them the connection, and then the coffee.
Yeah, and you do forget about that connection where Lygon Street and then running parallel is Swanston, the university's right on the doorstep. So the two are synonymous with each other, aren't they?
Yeah.
So why was Carlton the place where Little Italy took root?
I've often thought about that because I grew up in the country, so my family, immediate family, didn't grow up in Melbourne. I think it was coincidental in many ways, and the factors that would have contributed to that, it was in a city, good public transport because many of the new arrivals, post-war immigrants, didn't have cars. It was cheaper. There's a lot of boarding houses because many of the immigrants initially came out as single men, and that also gave them a support structure. They spoke the same language, and they could play cards, and it gave them introductions. And that's long before the internet. That's how people often found their first job. It was through an introduction. Someone was working at a factory, someone knew an Italian builder, and that's what gave them the first leg up.
No social media.
No. And then, the coffee, the dining, the restaurants, that evolved, that followed, and that gave it the identity, and it became a draw card for it. And then gradually people moved out, but we're still drawn to Carlton. So I think that's what contributed to it. It was essentially a good support network for them.
And is it that extension, I suppose, in the sort of boulevard format that Robert Hoddle envisioned, physically and socially, that made it such a special gathering place in those early years?
Yeah, I think what contributed to it, Sean, was that the cafe. It is a natural meeting place. Having a coffee, especially in the early days, it's not expensive. You can have a coffee with a friend, and so I think the street is what was conducive to that cafe culture emerging, and then the restaurants followed later. Yeah.
And as we've touched on, it is the birthplace of Melbourne's cafe culture, full of espresso machines, pizzerias, alfresco dining, as you've mentioned. It's got a fantastic late night culture. Yes. You also alluded to it before, the heyday of the Lygon Street Festa, which is now over at the exhibition building, which is also obviously a fantastic space in Carlton, but not in the heart of Lygon Street as it once was. But I suppose before the days of Federation Square, it used to be a meeting place for the America's Cup victory and World Cup wins and all those big sort of street and cultural celebrations we used to see. But it's obviously lost a little bit of that. I think there's been efforts in recent times to sort of draw more of a crowd back to places like Argyle Square, which is halfway up Lygon Street, near Pelham Street, if anybody's wondering about the logistics. So it was always a place where Melburnians came to meet, celebrate and be seen and connect. So in your memory, when was Lygon Street at its absolute peak?
I think I would say the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
That also coincides with when I got to Melbourne in the late 70s. But I think in that era, it was really busy. It was packed.
Yeah.
It just seemed to be a natural meeting place. If you're going out or going to football, it was typical to start in Carlton and end in Carlton. So you'd come back that night, even if you dined elsewhere.
And there also used to be footy games at Princes Park down the road for all the Blues. So there's a natural connection there.
And it was much more parochial then.
Yeah.
And as I said, I was a Carlton supporter, and I always remember the Carlton-Collingwood games, and you would come back to Lygon Street. So, and it was always a big bonus if you saw a Carlton footballer down the street. So I felt there was a closer connection between the local footy team and the area as well.
Yeah.
And but it was a great meeting, and it was really, really busy. And look, maybe part of the decline is also because Melbourne has grown. Our population is bigger. It's spread out more. And some of the earlier participants have either moved out, grown older, or passed on. So it there's a lot that can be done, but it doesn't shock me that it doesn't have the concentration that it once did, because life changes, and we want to preserve the past, but I don't think we can live in it. And for example, I was shocked when I went to Little Italy in New York and how small it was, and it's not like it was in the movies.
Yes.
So, a similar evolution has happened there as well.
Yep. And what do you remember about big public celebrations like the Festa in their heyday?
Yeah, they were really unique, because I'd never experienced anything like it in Australia. I know they're common in Italy, even in little villages, and just the energy of the place, of the event. There was so many. There was a lot of people. Food was celebrated. Traditional dance. It was a real cultural event. I think it became diluted later on, and it went for the weekend, and it had such a strong drawing power that now I think about it, I would come twice. I'll come Saturday and Sunday, and you also met different people. And I don't think Melbourne or Australia had experienced anything like it, and it just had a fantastic energy and vibrancy about it. It was a really great celebration of the Italian culture. I think it really made a strong statement about Carlton, and it really made it stand out.
Yeah, and was that energy, do you think, that made the street so magnetic for so many years?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely, yes.
And if you were to try and describe Lygon Street to someone who had never been there and never saw it, how would you describe it?
I think to a large extent, as we've just discussed, Sean, it's still a great meeting place, still a good place to eat, to drink. It's got a lot aspects of the Italian passeggiata, walking up and down the street. So I don't have a single destination. I'll wander up and down and then just land somewhere at a different place. Yeah. So it's a lively indoor and outdoor strip.
Lovely place to experience the best of Melbourne. So again, you've already touched on it before, but let's get into it's more than food, obviously, Lygon Street and the broad area around Carlton. There's obviously some fantastic restaurants there, but culture, arts and ideas are central to its identity. You mentioned before, among those who forged that identity are institutions like Reading, Cinema Nova, La Mama, Museo Italiano is another one that we didn't mention before. Obviously, the university connections via Melbourne Uni, RMIT, so there's a lot of students in the area and sort of young vitality through their presence. The residential community as well also has a conduit via great buildings that are led by the City of Melbourne, like Carlton St, a beautiful library there on Faraday Street. So political and artistic life in Carlton really defines the area more broadly, and it's got a very, very bohemian intellectual edge to it, as we touched on before. So we've gone into it already about just how central it is, I suppose, and it is more than just food. But when we talk about Little Italy and all these sort of concepts about the street evolving and things, do you think that creative and sort of knowledge-based pathway is perhaps holds some of the answers to how Lygon Street can continue to evolve in a successful manner?
Yeah, definitely. I think that. Well, I feel that a lot of Lygon Street's identity has eroded or been diluted over the last few years, and we need to work to restore that. And I think it does need a unified strategic plan, which could take a few years rather than just doing it piecemeal.
So a master plan for Lygon Street,
and that would need the input of various stakeholders, not just traders, obviously, but also the residents, various organisations like COASIT that are invested in the area, City of Melbourne, and to not stay in the past, but to preserve a lot of our history and our heritage, but also make it more attractive to a broader group. And that, I think, we would look at things like we would need to look at things like the streetscape. It just has no resemblance to a European streetscape at all. There's uneven footpaths, different paths, different awnings. There's just no continuity in the strip. That's one part. More activations, I think, and art installations would enrich the area. A divisive subject that is gaining more traction is about closing the street or slowing down the traffic, and that would make it more pedestrian friendly. Hopefully that should also attract more al fresco dining, more visitations, and that. So I don't think it won't be one thing on its own. The mix of traders would contribute to that as well. I was relieved to read just recently that Donati's Butchers, has been bought by the family behind King and Godfrey, so it will have a continuity. So I think also targeting and attracting businesses are going to contribute to the revival, and also that have strong connections with Italian artisans and producers. Doc is one example that does that really well. So more of that, so that make it still have the Italian heritage, but make it more contemporary. And but without losing sight of the period buildings we have as well. And I think it can all coexist. But I do think a coordinated plan is what's going to ultimately be needed.
Is that something you've already advocated for to City of Melbourne?
Not we haven't as Carlton Inc, but we are involved in discussions. We due to have a discussion with Carlton Traders, Residents Association. There's an architect that's advocating for it as well. I've had discussions with him. So everybody's kind of entertaining it on their own. I think we're very close to coming together and being more united, and then certainly going to City of Melbourne with that.
Oh, it's very exciting.
Yes.
So to revisit again, I mean, you've already touched on it a lot there in that part, but also mentioned earlier about foot traffic and how there's some peak periods, perhaps at night and around weekends, but during the weekdays it's slow. And I think this probably is a good segue to the next component of this conversation, which is talking about Lygon Street as one street, but with several identities. So you've got that area at the top there with Brunetti's and Tiamo's readings like that. That seems to, I suppose, many Melbournians who are visiting Lygon Street is the closest thing that sort of evokes that best of Lygon experience. And then as you sort of go towards the city from that point, the energy of the place changes a little bit, doesn't it? I mean, there's still pockets of greatness, but there's also some areas perhaps near the Pelham Street section in particular around Argyle Square, which have been long dormant for a long time and things. So one of the interesting things about Lygon Street obviously isn't one single experience, but how do you see the street currently in those sort of sections, if you want to sort of break it up in that capacity?
Well, the northern end, it's probably the most prosperous. Say Elgin to Grattan. It's got a lot of anchor tenants that have been there for a long time, a lot of famous names. And then there's still some really good businesses in the next section. But the beat does slow down a bit. And then beyond Argyle Square, it doesn't really particularly stand for anything. And it is a long way from the other end. So it's probably lost its way, I'd have to say. I prefer it wasn't the case, but there effectively are three different sections. Yeah,
and so, I mean, in its heyday, those sections that we talk about which aren't as active as perhaps they used to be, I mean, what did they look like when they were at their best from your recollection?
There was more, there's probably more Italian establishments. I'm not saying that's the
answer,
the whole answer, but there was more cafes and restaurants that resembled the ones that have remained at the northern end. So I guess that attracted a bigger crowd. And if there was more reason to visit Carlton, it also meant there was more people in Carlton, and that may have contributed to it as well. But also, I guess we can't deny that since the 70s and the 80s, there are more strips to go to and more places you can get a pizza.
More
and
competition.
When I got to Melbourne, if you wanted a good pizza or a gelati or a coffee, Carlton was essentially where you came to, and people travelled from pretty well right across Melbourne. But there are alternatives now where you can get a pizza and a coffee, and maybe not everyone wants to travel from outer suburb in. So so we have to make Carlton distinctive and more compelling for people to come in and enjoy the experience.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic segue to our next question. Is Lygon Street still Melbourne's Little Italy? Because it's an issue and a conversation that's sparked a lot of debate, particularly in recent years with the changing face of Lygon Street, which we've just already touched on physically with those different segments and all the different businesses that now call Lygon Street and the surrounding streets home. But there's a real rise, particularly down that city end of Lygon Street, isn't there, of more Middle Eastern, Asian, multicultural businesses. Ramadan on Lygon Street and the Strip is a home for newer migrant communities too. So there's also this branding question I've heard from the likes of the Italian Chamber of Commerce about the pursuit of making Lygon Street Italian again. So
Yes.
you can tell this is something that really is a lot of people are obviously thinking about, and some people do see as perhaps a pathway to try and solve some of those problems that we continue to discuss about Lygon Street's identity today. But put simply, do you think Lygon Street is still Little Italy of Melbourne?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Yep.
It is Little Italy. It's synonymous with Italian culture. It has a strong history, and it might not occupy the whole of Lygon Street as it once did, but it still has, a lot of Little Italy in there, and there's a strong foundation to build on.
Yeah.
And as a strip, while there's a lot that can be done and needs to be done, and the traffic is down, I'm also, I also draw confidence from the fact there's been a lot of new investment, reinvestment. Accor Hotel is just opening up on Swanston Street just opened last week, next to the university. King and Godfrey, iconic corner. It's had a major rebuild literally inside in the last, say, 18 months.
And it's a fantastic new little takeaway pizza place.
Mecca on the corner.
Yep.
It had a revamp. Johnny Vincent Sam's, that's a recent arrival, but they've invested a lot of money. It's not... people associate the owners with comedy because they're a famous comedy trio, but they've invested as landlords and as operators. They open up the sandwich bar, their sandwich shop,
the panini
which had
place.
queues going right around the corner to Drummond Street. So there are signs that people still have confidence in the strip, and are investing and reinvesting. So there's a lot to build on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example actually you just touched on with the Sushi Mango guys at Johnny Vincent Sam's. Talking about whether it still is Little Italy. I mean, obviously they wholeheartedly believe that, don't they? Because you walk into their restaurant and evokes feelings of being at Nonna's house.
Yes. Yeah, and I think, we need an identity. Like you have Chinatown is exclusively Italian, not, but there has to be you have to have a strong reason for people to visit, stay and enjoy. And I think, offering or celebrating that Italian experience and history would be a key part of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you think Lygon Street sort of balances that need to preserve its Italian identity but still allowing that sort of multicultural evolution that we're seeing?
I think while the past is important and we want to preserve and build on that, you still have to there's still room, to accommodate others. Our society has changed, so people often feel threatened by some of the Middle Eastern restaurants at the other end, but
the shisha bars.
Yeah, but it was similar when the Italians first arrived. Started opening shops in the post-World War II era, and they were seen as a threat. So, and it evolved over time. So, I do believe we can coexist, but I also believe you have to have a strong identity and an attractive and a safe landscape to then attract visitors and investment. It can't just be a street.
Yeah. And let's get into what is not necessarily the sexiest topic, but an important one, I think, to emphasise about the economics, I suppose, of business on Lygon Street, and particularly from your perspective as president of the Trade Association, what you're seeing in terms of the types of traders, foot traffic, spending habits, and while we don't want to dwell on it too much because we want to keep that well in the past, is what the impacts of COVID brought on Lygon Street, and as you mentioned before, how it still isn't the same, is it? That same rhythm that we used to see before COVID is still kind of recovering. So what have traders told you about in the last few years in terms of spending patterns of foot traffic, in terms of what they're seeing every day?
Well, traders always tell you it's bad because it's like negotiating with your landlord. But but it's not. Yeah, look, it is down, and you might be. On a Saturday night, it might be really busy, but they'll remind you that Monday and Tuesday is quiet. So, that's a real concern. And also, what probably compounds it is, people work from home, so they don't more. So you don't have the same visitation pattern that we previously did. That certainly contributes to it. And in addition to the foot traffic, particularly hospitality has become increasingly regulated over the years, and so that adds to their cost of food, cost of power and so on. So that all contributes to the model. And, many hospitality operators work on a pretty thin margin. More foot traffic would definitely help, but it's not just the food traffic. Other challenges have come into play as well.
Yeah.
But ultimately more people would make it easier to make things add up.
Has the customer base changed at all from what you've been seeing or what business has been telling you? Or is it just less customers?
There's probably less customers, and my initial thought is, no, it hasn't changed, but it probably has, because if I look at my daughter and her generation, they tend not to go as regularly as I do. And my daughter, that's just a straw poll that says, I don't go to Carlton for the same reasons you do.
Yeah.
And whereas, I'm there most days. She said, you even go on your days off, on your holidays, Dad. And so I think younger people have probably got a wider choice, probably pursuing also, cultural experiences, and we've lost a lot of that as well.
Yeah. And are there any particular kinds of businesses that are feeling it hardest right now more than others, do you think? Like hospitality versus retail, or is there not much sort of splitting the difference there?
Look, probably both, but because we've been a hospitality strip for so long, if hospitality is thriving, then there's people that will go into shops. I hadn't thought about it a lot, Sean, but I think people come to dine first and then shop, not the other way around.
That's still the attraction.
Yeah. But there are some really good retail shops, and they'll be feeling it as well. And again, there's the online. You can buy online now as well, and they've had to adapt.
Well, let's get into Carlton Inc now and its role in activating the precinct, and for all the challenges we've already alluded to today. It's not necessarily an easy job, but it's certainly an enjoyable one because it's a great part of the world to be able to work and support. So what role does activation play in keeping a strip like Lygon Street alive from a trade association's perspective, do you think?
I think importantly, we give the traders a voice. And it does take a little time, I have to say, to win their confidence. And but once you do build that relationship and rapport, you have a voice. So that's where a lot of the intel comes from. I mean, you can have statistics which are important, but just being on the strip, talking to people. Not only do they voice their problems, but they'll also voice ideas, great ideas. That's how the Lygon Street market came. Was
which we'll
born.
get to.
It was an idea. And so then we ran with that, and we planned it and we got that up. So that's important. Because of our limited resources and we're all volunteers,
of course.
except you can't pursue every avenue. But if something is important, like the antisocial, so we work closely with the police. We push for the CCTV cameras and so on. So we'll work on that. We campaigned for the paving. It started, but hopefully that will continue. So we're a conduit, I guess, we are between the traders and the and City of Melbourne, but also we collaborate closely, as I said earlier, with, say, the Residents Association, police, with COASIT. We support the festa that happens at the exhibition building. So, look, ultimately, our ultimate goal is to make Carlton attractive, to make it an international, not just a national symbol of hospitality and culture. And so that's what drives us. It takes time, so it's important not to be frustrated and lose sight of the bigger picture. But advancing Carlton, that's really what our role is.
Of course. And I can remember when we at Hyperlocal News started our local paper, Inner City News, in the area, and first started talking to traders and residents around Carlton. And one of the key issues that kept coming up was the underutilisation of Argyle Square as an event space. We saw a little bit of that sort of, street life, public celebration come back, didn't we, after Italy won the Euros? And so then again, everybody gathered at Argyle Square, and it was a great meeting place. So that, I suppose, has now fed into what you already touched on before, which has been led by Carlton Inc. and the Rose Street markets, I believe. But bringing a Lygon Street monthly market to Argyle Square, which has been, as I understand, a really big success. Do you want to just touch on the impact that I suppose that's had in sort of bringing that street life back to Lygon Street and also triggering ideas for potentially other things at that space.
Yeah, and that's as you touched on, our partners are the experienced Race Street market operators and the Ferranti brothers, and we worked on that for a year, and that's on the first Sunday of every month.
Yeah.
And it's not the total solution, but it's a start. And what we've started talking about now is having some extensions to that. Things like maybe a pizza competition, could have sausage making in the sausage making season, maybe sauce making, and activations that revolve around that. And we have entertainment for the Christmas one. So it has been a good start, but I think we want to now build on that and give it more momentum, because it's a fantastic space, but it's really underutilised. Most of the time, it's really not used.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of compliance involved, but it'd be great to have an activation in Argyle Square, say, during the Australian Open.
Yep.
Because not everyone, we've got visitors from all over Australia and internationally, and it is city edge. So if we had a big screen, I know we've got to comply with safety and so on, but if we had the screens going, could have maybe clinics for the kids. Formula One could be another one. Carlton, when Carlton is in the finals, Carlton Football Club, maybe we could have that on the screen as well. And I think that would bring a lot of energy and spirit back to the street. And Argyle Square, it's really not that well utilised.
Yeah. And as I alluded to, I suppose the impetus as well for starting such an initiative as a regular monthly market is to, spur new creativity, new ideas. And I suppose there's been none more prominent than the Sushi Mango guys, who I know are members of Carlton Inc as well, and you have regular conversations with about what they see for the future of the street. But we led with a front cover story, I think, some point last year about their desire to see the return of the Lygon Street Festa and make it as big and as magnificent as it once was. So do you think the Lygon Street Festa can really come back in a meaningful way, and has initiatives like your market, I suppose, helped to sort of spur some of that imaginative thinking again?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a place for it. The challenge is more to do with compliance and funding, not the Festa concept itself. And also, which is important, because a few people have had concerns about it clashing or competing with the other. It won't at all. In fact, the organisers are on the organising committee. So we see that the two would coexist, and they're a different model. And the other one is in the latter part of the second half of the year, the exhibition. This would probably be in the first half, say
so
March.
you have two giant Italian celebrations bookending the year.
Yeah, working. And the other one is more of a cultural exhibition. This would be more of a street carnival. And we collaborate with Coazat, who's the organizer of the other one, and they for it. So a lot of people think, there's a clash, or it's one or the other. We believe the two could coexist. The reason for the first half is, March, the weather's still good for an outdoor event.
Yes.
It's always a gamble with
It's Melbourne's best weather in autumn, I think.
Yeah, and we've just had the Grand Prix. Football season is about to start, and I think what will be important is the planning. So the model has to be clear, and we can't be all things, because it will be diluted, and food will play a big part, but also food, dance, culture, some of the famous favourites, maybe like the greasy pole, and the waiters race, and and it's really entertainment and interaction on the street, and, rather than the exhibition style. And there is an organising committee in place and been meeting regularly. There's a mix of skills, and also people that were involved with the original Festa. So there's a lot of experience, people involved with the current exhibition, and so it's well beyond talk. And we've also had a lot of good input from the organisers of successful Greek Festa, Lonsdale Street. It's been going for over 20
that's a huge
years.
event.
And they've shared very generously with us, and there's a big body of knowledge there, and we've been able to experience, benefit from that. But
Wow.
there is a lot of work involved,
Yeah.
funding and compliance, but it's worth pursuing.
Yeah, but you think all the mechanics are there to do it properly from the sounds of it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So do you think the return of that festa could be a symbolic turning point for the street?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so because I think it would give the street a renewed confidence.
Yes.
That, we're back and we can do things, and that's a second festival that we got happening.
Yeah.
And then it could lead to other things. People, as I said earlier, different people have invested in the street or reinvested, so that gives confidence. And I definitely do. But ultimately, I think we do need that strategic master plan that keeps it unified.
Yeah, and as you've touched on before, I mean, when we revisit these notions of Melbourne's Little Italy and some of those old things that evokes, I suppose it's important when you're planning an event like this to not want to return to exact sort of prototype of the past.
No.
But do it in a way that is a modern adaptation of what made that festival great, but then, bring it back for sort of the modern audience. So is that narrative essential component of the conversations among organisers at the moment?
Definitely. And there are different views that circulate. And as much as I miss the old festa and, I loved it, I don't advocate that we go back to the past.
Yeah.
And, we take the best parts of it, but then we need to make it, relevant to today. And an older person said to me years ago, I was talking about him being sentimental, and he said if I was overly sentimental, I'd still be driving my first car. We do also need to move on. No, it can't be a replica of the 70s. I don't think that would necessarily fly.
Yeah.
In the 2020s.
Yeah, and I also want to touch on briefly as well the connection between businesses and the very established community of residents who call Carlton home.
Yes.
Because I know in more recent times there's been some great collaboration between the Carlton Residents Association and Carlton Inc, which is a fantastic thing for the area when you're bringing businesses and residents together. But in particular, I think CRA might have led it with your support. I'm not sure how it was sort of conceived, but they've got a vision that they've shared in our paper a few times about how to transform Lygon Street, and maybe that feeds into the master plan conversation that we touched on before. But I think put simply, one of the things that is noteworthy about that plan is, as I touched on before, Lygon Street is still 2 lanes of traffic both sides of the street.
Yes.
When you see the likes of the Sushi Mango guys opening their panini bar and there's queues wrapping around the street, and that does still happen on Lygon Street sometimes when there's a particular event or something that draws people to the area. So I suppose that narrowness of the footpaths, and what we also saw in COVID a little bit with outdoor dining, has meant that they're, I suppose, fed the inspiration for their vision to widen those footpaths so that you have more street life and pedestrianisation as opposed to more traffic running through the place. So what do you think? Is this an example of the best of residents and businesses working together at the moment? And where do you sit on a vision like what CRA's proposing at the moment?
In personally, I think Carlton Inc would, but speaking personally, I support it. And initially I thought it was a bit radical, but because it had been well thought out and supported and it was only conceptual, I could see the merit. I see what's happened in places like, say, Yarraville, where what was a temporary mall, let's say, was extended and became permanent. There's more
like around the Sun Theatre there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's great there.
More, outdoor dining,
astroturfed areas,
shopping, etc. So I think it has a lot of merit. It would be part of a big plan, and it's not so much a question of do we do it or we don't do it. Is it worth investigating? And yes, it definitely is, because I think it would enhance the street and hopefully also slow down, the traffic and the noise, and that might also then tie into the streetscape planning. Who knows? Maybe we have cobblestone streets, give them more European feel, slow down the traffic, and certainly the pavement, whether that was maybe a bluestone. I'm not an urban planner. That would contribute to it as well. And then
I think the City of Melbourne's already making efforts to put bluestone down. Yes,
it has started at the Phelan Street end. Yes, so I think it's got a lot of merit. It's a pretty divisive subject. There's those that think it's great and why hasn't it happened, and there's some people every time I see them say, "We're going to close the street," and then there's others that'll say, "Oh, you're going to kill it, you're going to kill it," and but it's certainly got the discussion.
Kill it through bluestone paving.
No, closing the street.
Oh right, sorry.
But it's definitely becoming a talking point.
Yeah,
and I think it's one. I think it's worth pursuing.
Yeah, and like bluestone paving and footpaths, it's not necessarily the sexiest topic, but I think it's important to emphasise the safety, cleanliness, and amenity in the public realm and the impact that's had. You've already touched on it before. I suppose the impacts that traders are sharing with you or have been in the past couple of years, but let's I suppose talk about the solutions that we're seeing now, because as you say before, the council and VicPol in particular have invested a lot of resources into CCTV, more foot patrols, community safety officers. So. How big of an issue is safety and amenity been for traders on Lygon Street, and how heartened, I suppose, are you by the responsible authorities to address that in more recent times?
Yeah, I think it's not eliminated because it won't be.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's definitely improved. And look, it's easier to be negative and cynical, but I think a big part in that, Sean, was that City of Melbourne, Vic Police, they listened. And they didn't sugarcoat. They acknowledged, and Vic Police are to be complimented. They've really applied themselves, and that has helped. And I think it's reduced a lot of the antisocial behaviour. Some of it's still there. The cameras have helped. It's helped, make certain arrests, and that's a really important part in restoring the street.
Yeah, and the CCTV's made a discernible difference, you think?
Yes.
Yeah,
it definitely has.
Yeah,
and obviously City of Melbourne and Vic Police work pretty closely together, and we formally meet with Victoria Police every quarter, all the precincts. So there's good collaboration there, and it has made a difference.
Yeah, and you touched on it before again about a lot of debate about footpaths and wider design of the streets. I mean, is it challenging as the head of a business association when you're representing so many diverse views across businesses to actually represent accurately what traders want, or get a sense of what all traders want as a bit of a collective?
It does. You do feel that way initially, and then over time, certain themes will dominate.
Yeah.
And you learn that you can't pursue everything at once. So certain themes like safety, that's a high priority. The streetscape, that's another one. Activations is another one. So I guess you choose your causes, and that would take care of the majority. And the progressive traders, I should say, they also offer really valuable ideas and solutions and suggestions. So they are part of the answer, and then you'll have others who will complain all the time. And complaining is really easy, but it doesn't really get you anywhere.
Need some solutions.
But most people are pretty progressive, and they'll engage you. And also, I found after a while, if you listen and you're making a really solid effort, they will support you. Not necessarily happy with how things are, but they'll listen, they'll support you, they'll show their appreciation. So it's important to retain the faith and keep going. It's probably not as difficult as you would expect.
Yeah.
And most of them are pretty reasonable. They see you having a good go, you're a volunteer, you're in a place, you respond. It's when you don't come back to them that they get cynical.
Of course.
Yeah.
And justifiably so in many instances. So I suppose to look to summarising with a look to the future about Lygon Street, and of course the small streets that feed off Lygon, because there's many wonderful businesses that don't necessarily operate on Lygon but help make Carlton what it is. And there's some sort of big picture visions and other things that we haven't even touched on in the conversation, like the future of Lygon Court and the planning debates about growth, because we talk about that top end up Faraday with Brunetti's and Tiamo's and Readings, as I touched on before, but Lygon Court is such a defining precinct for the Woolworths that backs onto Drummond Street there, and there's talk of change there, as I understand it, in the future somewhere. There's also been that conversation about how we strengthen the public squares of Carlton, so between Carlton Gardens linking to Argyle Square, linking to Lincoln Square, linking to University Square, and how Pelham Street plays a role in some sort of linear park. Supporting the creative sector through La Mama, who have worth noting as well, have been through some difficult years in recent times and are still re-emerging from that, but are such an important part of Carlton's identity. And you touched on before as well about obviously the need to balance heritage with all this change and these big picture visions that we talk about. And of course the need for a clear vision for Lygon Street, which perhaps, alludes to that master plan that you touched on over the next 20 years. So with everything we've talked about today and some of those also big picture visions in mind, what should Lygon Street be in 10 years' time if you were in control?
Okay. I think that what I'd love to see in the next 10 years, it regain some of that Italian landmark. Yeah. We celebrate the heritage and the culture. We have a more unified and supportive streetscape, probably with a more European flavour about it, in that maybe, a more pedestrian-friendly environment that then also attracts more alfresco dining, and ultimately more visitors, certainly more cultural activations, maybe some art installations. And then, central to that, because of the history, I think interesting food, not necessarily it doesn't have to be top end or Michelin star, but interesting food. And because it's always been renowned for that. And hopefully all that together will make us famous not only in Australia but worldwide as a beacon of Italian culture, vibrancy, and great hospitality.
Yeah. Is there one opportunity among all the things, from food, culture, festivals, streetscape, late night economy, that you see as the biggest opportunity? Are they all as equally as important as each other?
Look, they are all very important. One that you got the horse and the cart. It's a dilemma. I think the type of trader you've got, a great trader will pull not only people but other traders. So you get a distinctive eatery or a restaurant, or you get the readings, Brunetti. I think that also draws other people in as well. Hector's Deli, which has got a great following. It's about to open up in Carlton, so I think that gives you a confidence, and that brings other people, new people to the strip. So I think the mix of traders is really important, and maybe we could target over time, or as part of the master plan, certain traders and incentivise them to be represented in Carlton.
Yeah, and is it trade? I mean, I know we've touched on the Sushi Mango guys a few times in this conversation, but I think it's worth highlighting when we talk about what will attract future generations to a place like Lygon Street, so it doesn't sort of just risk falling into museum piece category when we talk about nostalgia all the time. Yes. So is it businesses like that you bear in mind when you think about how to preserve that important heritage, which makes the place so much of what it is today, but also sort of bringing it into a bit more of a modern setting?
Yeah. And also, they're a social media juggernaut. Their publicity is phenomenal. But look, they've been a great example, because I hear of people, country friends coming to Melbourne just to visit them. People from interstate ask about it, and then they'll visit Johnny Vincent Sam's, and I know other traders say they get a flow on from that as well. So that they're a great example, and it's not just because of their comedy reputation. I mean, they've invested serious money in that, and they run a really good business. So, and when we meet them, contrary to what people think, we don't meet them as comedians. We meet them as landlords and fellow traders.
Yes.
And that's how.
And lovers of the street.
Yeah. No, there's no question about their passion.
Yeah.
And they're willing to listen to others as well. So I think they've been a great contribution to Lygon Street, and now with a sandwich shop as well. And that's a great example of putting your money where your mouth is. Don't just complain, but invest. And I think they should be commended for that. I think they've given Carlton a good boost. Yeah.
And so while it's also always important to acknowledge the challenges that a street like Lygon Street continues to face, is it businesses like this and that evolution that we still see, albeit slowly in some instances, that keeps you hopeful about the future of the strip?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And the businesses that we are seeing coming in also what keeps me hopeful, Sean, is that there's a lot of people that care for Carlton, and there's a lot of people invested in Carlton. And also we have a pretty unique position. We're city edge. We butt onto Melbourne University. We've got the exhibition buildings nearby.
Yeah. There's a lot of great building blocks.
Co-Asset and so on.
Yeah.
A lot of famous retailers as well. So, there's certainly a lot going for it.
Yeah. And I suppose as a final call to action, if someone has written off Lygon Street, what would you say to convince them to come back?
Oh, definitely not. Just come to Lygon Street. The vibe is still there.
Yeah.
The energy is still there. It's still the best place in Melbourne to come and have a coffee. And there's a lot of love for the place. And we acknowledge that there's still a lot of work to be done, but the commitment is there, and it's worth working for.
Sergio, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.